The neon-drenched alleys of Zoravan Prime had a particular smell at night. Recycled air laced with the tang of illegal street food and the ozone burn of malfunctioning tech. Mitchell knew that smell, lived it, breathed it in every day of his life as a freelance courier in this urban hell. Tonight, that familiar scent was tinged with something else. Something wrong. Mitchell adjusted the package tucked under his arm, standard delivery, nothing special according to the manifest, and ducked beneath a tangle of coolant pipes. The scaffolding district was a maze of metal and steam, impossible to navigate unless you'd spent years learning its secrets. Fortunately, Mitchell had spent most of his adult life doing exactly that. The silence struck him first. Normally, this service corridor hummed with the sound of arc welders and exhaust fans. But now there was only the electric buzz of purple neon and, somewhere in the distance, an engine sound that seemed disturbingly organic. His courier instincts kicked in, the same instincts that had kept him alive through customs drone sweeps and gang territories. Something was off, very off. The package suddenly felt heavier in his hands. Standard delivery. That's what they always said when the contents were anything but standard. Yet the money had been good, too good to pass up, and in Zoravan Prime, survival meant taking risks. Mitchell paused, sniffing the air. There was a metallic scent now, like hot wiring and blood. The air felt charged, electric. The crash ahead made him freeze. Not mechanical, but the unmistakable sound of bone meeting metal. Hard. Every instinct screamed at him to turn back, to find another route, to avoid whatever conflict was occurring ahead. But curiosity had always been Mitchell's fatal flaw. He crept forward, keeping to the shadows, and peered around the corner. The scene was chaos. Shattered glass, torn metal, and in the middle of it all, her. Mitchell's first impression was of sheer predatory power. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, her body a graceful blend of humanoid and something else, something wild. Her skin was a deep indigo, marked with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed with each breath. Curved claws extended from powerful hands. A tail, thick with muscle, lashed behind her in agitation. But it was her eyes that caught and held Mitchell's attention, amber with vertical pupils, glinting with intelligence and fury. She was bloodied but unbowed, her stance that of a fighter preparing for the next wave of attackers. Mitchell tried to back away, to retreat into the safety of the shadows. His foot skidded on a piece of debris. Those predator eyes locked onto him immediately. In 3 fluid strides, she was upon him, moving faster than any creature her size had a right to move. One clawed hand closed around his throat, lifting him until his feet dangled above the ground. "Human," she growled, her voice like thunder wrapped in silk. "Wrong place. Wrong time." Mitchell choked, struggling for air. "Package. Just delivering a package." She sniffed, her nostrils flaring. Then she looked at the parcel still clutched in his white-knuckled grip. Not important, she decided, and Mitchell wasn't sure if she meant him or the package. Then her eyes narrowed, studying him with new interest. Her grip loosened just enough to let him breathe. "You. Survivor type. Street smart." She tilted her head, as if listening to a voice Mitchell couldn't hear. Useful, perhaps. Mitchell had been called many things in his life, but useful by a 7-foot alien predator was a first. "I'll mark you," she said suddenly, the words more decree than threat. "Mark me." Mitchell managed to croak. "Look, I don't want any trouble." "Not asking." She cut him off, her voice flat. Before Mitchell could process her words, she pulled him close. Her free hand moved with blinding speed, ripping aside the collar of his jacket and shirt to expose the junction between neck and shoulder. He felt her breath, hot against his skin, a momentary pause, almost hesitation. Then pain. White-hot, searing pain as her teeth sank deep into his flesh. But the physical agony was nothing compared to what followed. Energy, raw, alien, electric, surged from the contact point, flooding his system. Mitchell's vision exploded with colors he had no names for. His mind filled with fragments of memories that weren't his own. Strange skies, unfamiliar stars, the thrill of a hunt, the taste of fear. He screamed, but couldn't hear his own voice over the roaring in his head. When she finally released him, Mitchell collapsed to the ground. The last thing he saw before consciousness fled was her face, spattered with his blood, those amber eyes regarding him with an unreadable expression. "You are marked," she said. "You are mine now." The neon lights blurred, stretched, and faded to black. Pain was Mitchell's first conscious sensation, not the sharp agony of the bite, but a deep, throbbing heat centered on his shoulder and radiating throughout his body. He blinked awake in his own apartment, with no memory of how he'd gotten there. The package was gone. So was the alien woman. But the mark remained. Mitchell staggered to his bathroom mirror, wincing as movement sent fresh waves of pain through his system. He peeled back the torn fabric of his shirt and stared. The wound was unlike anything he'd ever seen. The punctures from her teeth were clearly visible, but around them, his skin had changed. Intricate patterns, similar to the bioluminescent markings on her skin, spiraled outward from the bite. They pulsed with a faint blue light in rhythm with his heartbeat. "What the hell did you do to me?" he whispered to his reflection. As if in response, a sharp pain lanced through his head. For a moment, he could have sworn he heard her voice, distant but clear, survive. The next few days were a nightmare of transformation and revelation. Mitchell discovered that his senses had sharpened dramatically. Smells were more intense, colors more vivid. He could hear conversations from across the street, pick out individual heartbeats in a crowd. The changes weren't just sensory. His reflexes had quickened. His strength had increased. A deep cut on his palm, sustained while breaking into his own apartment when he'd forgotten his keys, had healed within hours. But most disturbing were the dreams. Every night, he saw through her eyes, running, fighting, hunting. He felt her emotions, rage, determination, and something deeper, more primal, fear. She was being hunted, and now, through some alien connection forged by the mark, so was he. It started with subtle signs. A black drone hovering too long outside his window. The same face appearing in 3 different crowds. The prickling sensation at the base of his spine that told him he was being watched. Mitchell tried everything to remove the mark. He visited back-alley medics who stitched up knife wounds without asking questions. He sought out tech specialists who dealt in biological implants and modifications. He even found a self-proclaimed mystic who claimed to be able to cleanse spiritual contamination. Nothing worked. The mark remained, pulsing with its eerie light, sending occasional jolts of awareness through his system, awareness of her. On the 7th night after the marking, they came for him. Mitchell woke to the sound of his security system being disarmed, a sound too quiet for his old human ears to have detected. He was out of bed and moving before his conscious mind had fully awakened. 3 figures in sleek body armor, faces concealed behind reflective visors, were methodically searching his apartment. Their movements were too precise, too coordinated to be local gangs or police. Mitchell grabbed the kinetic baton he kept under his mattress and prepared to fight or flee. But before he could make his move, the window behind him shattered. She entered like a force of nature, all controlled violence and deadly grace. Her claws made short work of the first intruder, ripping through armor as if it were tissue paper. The second managed to fire some kind of energy weapon, but she moved like liquid shadow, the blast missing her by inches. Mitchell, driven by instincts he didn't recognize, launched himself at the third attacker. His enhanced strength took both of them by surprise as he slammed the figure into the wall with enough force to crack the plaster. The fight was over in seconds, leaving Mitchell's apartment in ruins and 3 bodies on the floor. "They found you faster than expected," she said, shaking blood from her claws. It was the first time he'd heard her voice since the marking. "Who are they? What do they want?" Mitchell demanded, adrenaline making his voice shake. "What did you do to me?" She stalked toward him, and despite his new abilities, Mitchell felt like prey. She seized his chin with one clawed hand, turning his face to examine him. "The mark is developing well," she observed. "You're adapting faster than I anticipated. Answer me." Mitchell pulled away from her grip, surprising both of them with his boldness. Her eyes narrowed, but there was something like respect in her gaze. "They are collectors," she said finally. "Hunters who capture specimens from across the galaxies. I am valuable to them." "And me?" Mitchell asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "You bear my mark. That makes you an extension of me. A curiosity. A way to track me." She tilted her head. "Or perhaps bait." Mitchell stared at the bodies on his floor. "I can't stay here." "No," she agreed. "You cannot." That was how Mitchell found himself on the run with an alien predator who'd fundamentally altered his existence without permission. She told him her name was Xylia, though she admitted it was merely the closest approximation her true name could take in human speech. They moved through the underbelly of Zoravan Prime like ghosts, using maintenance tunnels and abandoned structures, avoiding cameras and drones. Mitchell's knowledge of the city's hidden paths proved invaluable, while Xylia's combat abilities kept them alive whenever the collectors closed in. Their partnership was uneasy at first. Mitchell resented the unwanted changes to his body and the danger she'd brought into his life. Xylia clearly viewed him as a burden, albeit a necessary one. The mark connected them, making separation physically painful after a certain distance. "Why did you mark me?" Mitchell asked one night as they huddled in an abandoned maintenance bay, listening to the distant sound of search drones. Xylia was silent for so long that he thought she might not answer. "Instinct," she finally said. "In my culture, marking is complex. It can be many things. A claim of territory, a bond for hunting partners, a protection." She met his eyes. "I was wounded, outnumbered. The mark creates a connection that can be drawn upon in need." Drawn upon how? Instead of answering, she reached out and placed her hand over the mark on his shoulder. Instantly, warmth flooded the area, and Mitchell gasped as energy seemed to flow between them. For a moment, he could feel what she felt, her fatigue, her determination, and underneath it all, a deep well of grief. Just as quickly, she pulled her hand away, breaking the connection. "The mark allows for the sharing of strength, of essence," she explained. "It was meant to be a temporary measure. I did not expect it to take hold so completely in a human." Mitchell absorbed this. "These collectors, they're after you specifically." "Why?" Xylia's expression darkened. "I'm the last of my lineage. My blood carries memories, genetic knowledge of worlds and species long extinct. The collectors prize such things for their archives. So they want to what? Study you? Preserve you." Xylia bared her teeth in what might have been a smile, though it contained no humor. "They want to drain me, extract what makes me unique. The process would leave me an empty shell if it did not kill me outright." Mitchell fell silent, processing this. He'd always thought of himself as a survivor, someone who looked out for number one. Yet here he was, bound to an alien fugitive, running from interstellar hunters. All because he'd taken a shortcut through the wrong service corridor. Their first real test, as reluctant allies, came 3 days later. The collectors had set up a trap at a transit hub Mitchell had planned to use to reach the city's lower levels. They found themselves cornered in a loading bay, with hostiles approaching from multiple directions. "There," Mitchell pointed to a maintenance ladder. "That'll take us to the water reclamation system. We can lose them in the purification tunnels." Xylia looked skeptical. "Water? Problem. My species does not swim well." Mitchell would have laughed if the situation weren't so dire. The fearsome alien predator was afraid of water. "You don't need to swim. Just follow my lead." The firefight that followed was chaotic. The collectors had deployed some kind of energy net that seemed specifically designed to capture Xylia. Mitchell, operating on a combination of street smarts and his enhanced reflexes, managed to override the loading bay controls, creating a diversion with a cascade of cargo containers. As they fought their way to the maintenance ladder, a stray energy blast caught Mitchell in the leg. He stumbled, the searing pain nearly causing him to black out. Without hesitation, Xylia scooped him up as if he weighed nothing and leaped the remaining distance to the ladder. As they descended into the darkness, Mitchell felt the mark on his shoulder pulse with heat. The pain in his leg subsided to a dull throb as something Energy, strength, whatever power flowed through the mark, helped his body cope with the injury. "You're healing me," he gasped. "The mark connects us," Xylia replied tersely. "Your survival is currently tied to mine." It wasn't exactly a declaration of friendship, but Mitchell would take what he could get. The water reclamation tunnels were vast and labyrinthine, designed to collect and filter rainwater on a planet where natural precipitation was scarce and precious. Mitchell guided them through the network of pipes and filtration chambers, while Xylia moved with obvious discomfort, her claws scraping against the metal walkways. When they finally stopped to rest, hidden in a maintenance alcove, Mitchell examined his leg. The energy blast had burned through his pants and seared the skin beneath, but the wound was already healing, new pink skin forming over the burn at an accelerated rate. "The mark enhances your natural healing," Xylia observed. "You are becoming more like my kind in some ways." Mitchell wasn't sure how to feel about that. "Is that why my senses are sharper too? Why I'm stronger?" Xylia nodded. "The mark transfers aspects of the marker to the marked. It is how my people share. Strengths within a hunting pack." She studied him with those predator eyes. "No human has ever borne such a mark before. The effects may be unpredictable." "Great," Mitchell muttered. "I'm a science experiment." Xylia made a sound that might have been a laugh. "As am I," to the collectors. It was the first moment of genuine connection between them, this shared status as unwilling subjects of forces beyond their control. In the days that followed, they developed something like a routine. They would move at night, using Mitchell's knowledge of the city and Xylia's enhanced senses to avoid patrols. During the day, they would hide, rest, and occasionally venture out for supplies when necessary. Mitchell discovered that Xylia required raw meat, the fresher the better, to maintain her strength. He found himself breaking into livestock pens at the city's edge, something he would never have dared before his transformation. In turn, Xylia began to teach Mitchell how to use his enhanced abilities more effectively. She showed him how to filter his heightened senses to avoid becoming overwhelmed in crowded areas. She trained him in combat techniques that made use of his increased strength and speed. The mark continued to change him. His nails hardened into something like claws, not as formidable as Xylia's, but sharp enough to be useful in a fight. His teeth, particularly his canines, became more pronounced. His eyes adapted to see better in darkness, the pupils changing shape slightly in low light. But the most profound changes were internal. Mitchell began to experience emotions that didn't feel like his own, flashes of Xylia's thoughts and feelings bleeding through their connection. Most were too alien to fully comprehend, but some were unmistakable. The exhilaration of a successful hunt, the comfort of pack bonds, the deep-seated rage toward those who had destroyed her world. During one of their rest periods, hidden in an abandoned atmosphere processor plant, Mitchell finally asked the question that had been growing in his mind. "What happens if we defeat the collectors? What happens to this?" He gestured to the mark on his shoulder, which now extended in intricate patterns down his arm and across part of his chest. Xylia was silent for a long moment. "The mark is permanent," she said finally. "Even among my people, such bonds are not easily broken. So, I'm stuck like this? Half human, half. Whatever you are." Xylia bristled slightly at his tone. "You are still human, Mitchell. The mark enhances, changes, but does not replace. You will never be of my kind, but you will never be fully as you were before either." Mitchell absorbed this. "And us? This connection? That too is permanent." Her amber eyes held his. "In my culture, such a bond would make us Vralek, pack-bonded. Family, but deeper than your human concept of the word. Those who hunt together, fight together, live and die as one." The weight of her words settled over Mitchell. Forever bound to an alien predator, forever changed. It should have terrified him. Instead, he felt something unexpected, acceptance, perhaps even a strange sort of peace. Their moment of understanding was shattered by an explosion that rocked the building around them. The collectors had found them again. This time, the attack was more coordinated, more determined. Xylia and Mitchell fought back-to-back, her claws and his newly acquired combat skills making them a formidable pair. But the collectors kept coming, waves of them, with increasingly sophisticated weapons. In the midst of the chaos, Mitchell saw one of the collectors aim a strange device directly at Xylia. Acting on pure instinct, he threw himself in front of her just as the device fired. Pain unlike anything he had ever experienced, worse even than the marking, tore through his body. Every nerve ending seemed to be on fire. The mark on his shoulder blazed with blue light, so intense it showed through his clothing. Through the haze of agony, Mitchell heard Xylia roar, not in pain, but in fury. He felt her hands on him, felt the connection between them surge like an electrical current. And then he felt power. The mark wasn't just a connection, it was a conduit. Xylia was pouring her strength, her essence, into him through their bond. Mitchell rose to his feet, his body moving with a fluid grace that was not entirely his own. The pain receded, replaced by a rush of energy, so intense it bordered on euphoria. Together, they tore through the remaining collectors like a force of nature. Mitchell moved with Xylia as if they'd fought together for years, anticipating her movements, complementing her attacks with his own. The mark pulsed between them, a living bridge of power and purpose. When it was over, when the last of the collectors had fallen or fled, Mitchell collapsed to his knees, the borrowed strength leaving him all at once. Xylia knelt beside him, her own breathing labored. She placed a clawed hand over his mark, and the connection between them quieted to a gentle hum. "You saved my life," she said, something like wonder in her voice. "You saved mine first," Mitchell replied, thinking of that moment in the loading bay. Xylia shook her head. "This was different. You chose to put yourself in harm's way for me." Her eyes searched his. "Why?" Mitchell didn't have a proper answer. It hadn't been a conscious decision, just an instinctive need to protect her. "The mark," he suggested weakly. "No," Xylia said with certainty. "The mark connects us, but it does not control. That was your choice, Mitchell. Your humanity, not my influence." They relocated to a new hiding place, an abandoned luxury apartment in a half-finished development project. As they tended to their wounds and recovered their strength, something had shifted between them. The resentment and wariness that had characterized their early days together had given way to a tentative trust, perhaps even the beginnings of genuine alliance. It was here, looking out over the neon-drenched skyline of Zoravan Prime, that Xylia finally told Mitchell the full truth. "I came to this planet seeking a relic," she said. "An artifact of my people, stolen years ago when the collectors first began hunting us." "What kind of artifact?" Mitchell asked. "We called it the Heart of Memory. It contains the collective genetic memory of my entire species, their wisdom, their knowledge, their essence." Xylia's voice grew softer. "When the collectors came, they destroyed my world. Those of us who survived scattered across the stars. The heart was meant to preserve what we were, so that one day we might rebuild. And the collectors took it." Xylia nodded. "They took it, studied it, and then sold it to the highest bidder, a collector of rare objects here on Zoravan Prime." Mitchell's mind raced. "That's why you're here. You're trying to get it back." "I tracked it to the city. I was close to finding its location when the collectors found me." She looked at him, at the mark visible beneath his torn clothing. "That was the night I marked you. So you're on a rescue mission," Mitchell said, "trying to save your species' legacy." "It is more than that," Xylia replied. "The heart contains genetic templates. With it, my people could be reborn. Without it, I am truly the last." The magnitude of her quest struck Mitchell like a physical blow. He had thought she was simply running, surviving. But she was fighting for the future of her entire species. "Tell me how to help," he said. Xylia studied him for a long moment, as if seeing him for the first time. Then she explained her plan. The Heart of Memory was in the possession of a wealthy xenoarchaeologist named Dr. Hammond, who had a private museum in Zoravan Prime's upper levels. Security was tight, and the museum was filled with rare and dangerous artifacts from across the galaxy. "Getting it will be nearly impossible," Xylia concluded. especially now that the collectors know I am here and seeking the heart. But Mitchell was already thinking like a courier, finding the path, calculating the risks, planning the route. Nothing's impossible in Zoravan Prime, he said. Not if you know the right people and the right paths. Over the next few days, Mitchell called in every favor he was owed, tapped every contact he had in the city's sprawling underground. He learned the layout of Dr. Hammond's museum, the rotation of the security guards, the specifications of the alarm systems. Xylia watched him work with growing respect. His skills complemented hers perfectly, her strength and combat prowess paired with his knowledge of the city and its systems. The mark between them continued to evolve. Mitchell could now sense Xylia's presence and general emotional state even when they were separated. He found himself adopting some of her mannerisms, a particular tilt of the head when listening, a low growl of frustration when things went wrong. In turn, Xylia began to display more human characteristics. She developed a dry sense of humor, began to understand Mitchell's idioms and slang, even adopted some of his problem-solving approaches. They were changing each other, becoming something neither fully human nor fully of Xylia's kind. The night before they planned to infiltrate the museum, they stood on the rooftop of their hideout, watching the city's lights flicker like earthbound stars. "What will you do?" Mitchell asked. "If we get the heart, I mean. Where will you go?" Xylia was silent for a moment. "There is a place, a hidden world where the survivors of my kind agreed to meet. If any others still live, they will be there." She looked at him. "The mark connects U.S. Mitchell. Where I go, you can follow if you choose." The implication hung in the air between them. Leave Earth. Leave humanity behind. Travel to the stars with her. "Where you could stay," she continued, surprising him. "The connection would be painful at first with such distance between us, but it would endure. You could remain here, keeping a part of my kind alive in your own way." It was the first time she had acknowledged that he had a choice in any of this. Mitchell wasn't sure what to say. "Let's focus on getting the heart first," he finally replied. "Then we can decide what comes next." The museum infiltration was a masterpiece of planning and execution. Mitchell's underground contacts provided them with guard uniforms and security credentials. His knowledge of the city's power grid allowed them to create a brief, localized outage that reset the museum's more sophisticated alarm systems. Xylia's enhanced senses detected guard patrols before they came into view. The mark between them allowed for silent communication. Impressions, images, warnings passed back and forth without a word spoken. They moved through the museum like shadows, past displays of interstellar artifacts and xenobiological specimens. Some of the items made Mitchell's skin crawl. There was something fundamentally wrong about collecting pieces of extinct civilizations like trophies. The Heart of Memory was housed in a special display case at the center of the museum's main hall. It was smaller than Mitchell had expected, a crystalline structure about the size of his fist, pulsing with an internal blue-green light that reminded him of the mark on his shoulder. Xylia froze when she saw it, a complex mix of emotions flooding through their connection. Grief, hope, determination, rage. "That's it," she whispered. "The last piece of my world." Mitchell moved to the security panel controlling the display case. Using the access codes his contacts had provided, he began the process of disabling the alarms. That was when everything went wrong. A voice rang out across the museum hall. "I've been expecting you." Dr. Hammond stepped from the shadows, flanked by security guards. But these weren't ordinary guards. Their movements were too precise, their posture too rigid. "Collectors," Xylia snarled. Hammond smiled. "My associates have been most helpful in preparing for your arrival." He gestured to the heart, a remarkable artifact, the complete genetic and cultural memory of an entire species, encoded into a crystalline matrix, worth quite a fortune to the right buyer. Mitchell felt Xylia tense beside him, ready to launch herself at Hammond despite the guards. "Wait," he murmured, placing a hand on her arm. Through the mark, he sent her an impression, asterisk together. "Like before, asterisk." She met his eyes and gave a slight nod. "You know what that is," Mitchell said to Hammond, stepping forward. "You know what it means." It's not just an artifact. It's the future of an entire species. Hammond shrugged. Many of my exhibits are the last remnants of extinct civilizations. That's what gives them their value. My people are not yet extinct, Xylia growled. But you and your collector allies have done your best to make them so. Something cold and predatory entered Hammond's eyes. The collectors have been hunting your kind for decades. You are resilient, I'll grant you that. But ultimately, all rare species find their way into collections. Mitchell felt the mark on his shoulder begin to heat up, responding to Xylia's rising anger. Now, Hammond continued, I believe the collectors have a special interest in capturing you alive, and your human pet as well. The first human to bear a Kazul mark. Quite the scientific curiosity. The guards began to close in. Mitchell counted 6 of them, all armed with the same energy weapons they'd encountered before. Ready? He sent the thought to Xylia through their bond. Always came her reply, fierce and clear. The fight that followed was like a dance, perfectly choreographed through their psychic connection. Mitchell moved with inhuman speed, his partially transformed body responding with strength and reflexes he'd never imagined possessing. Xylia was a blur of claws and teeth, devastating in her fury. The mark blazed between them, power flowing back and forth, amplifying their abilities. When Mitchell was hit by an energy blast, Xylia's resilience flowed into him, preventing the wound from being fatal. When Xylia was temporarily stunned by an electromagnetic pulse, Mitchell's human physiology helped her recover more quickly. They were more than the sum of their parts. More than human. More than causal. Something new, forged in survival and strengthened by choice. Hammond fled during the chaos. Mitchell pursued him through the museum, following the scent of the man's fear, a new ability he hadn't even realized he'd developed. He cornered Hammond in a storage room filled with crates of artifacts waiting to be cataloged. You don't understand what you're interfering with, Hammond gasped, backing away from Mitchell. The collectors aren't just hunters. They preserve. They archive. Without them, countless species would be lost to history entirely. You're talking about extinction as if it's inevitable, Mitchell replied, advancing on the man. But Xylia's people have a chance to survive, to rebuild. The heart could give them that chance. She's filled your head with fairy tales, Hammond sneered. Even if other Kazuls still live, where are they now? Scattered refugees, hiding in the shadows. A doomed species. Mitchell felt a surge of protective rage that surprised him with its intensity. Not doomed. Not while she lives. Not while I carry her mark. He seized Hammond by the throat, lifting the man as easily as Xylia had once lifted him. The heart. Where's the control to release it? Fear replaced arrogance in Hammond's eyes. He fumbled in his pocket and produced a small remote. This will deactivate the security field, but the collectors will never stop hunting you. Either of you. Mitchell took the remote. Then they'll have to hunt harder. When he returned to the main hall, he found Xylia standing amid the unconscious or dead bodies of the guards. She was wounded but standing, her amber eyes fixed on the heart, still glowing in its display case. Mitchell handed her the remote. It's time to take back what's yours. With a trembling claw, Xylia pressed the button. The security field around the heart shimmered and disappeared. Reverently, she approached the artifact, reaching out to touch it for the first time. As her claws made contact with the crystalline surface, the heart's glow intensified, resonating with the same blue light as the mark on Mitchell's shoulder. Tears, actual tears, slid down Xylia's alien features. My people, she whispered. They're all here. Their knowledge, their memories, their essence. Mitchell stood beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. Through their connection, he felt a fraction of what she was experiencing. The profound grief for what was lost, the overwhelming hope for what might yet be. They had no time to linger. The alarm had been triggered, and more security would be coming. Possibly more collectors as well. With the heart secured in a special container Xylia had prepared, they fled the museum, using every shortcut and hidden path Mitchell knew to make their escape. They didn't stop running until they reached the spaceport at the edge of Zoravan Prime. There, in a neglected maintenance bay, waited the ship Xylia had arrived in, a sleek, organic-looking vessel that seemed more grown than built. As they stood before the ship, the reality of their situation crashed down on Mitchell. This was the moment of choice. Stay on Earth, with the mark forever connecting him to a distant alien, or leave everything he knew behind and follow Xylia to the stars. The hidden world I spoke of, Xylia said softly, is called Kavas. It means new beginning in my language. She looked at him, those predator eyes somehow gentle now. If any of my kind still live, they will be there. And if they don't, Mitchell asked, then the heart will allow for new Kazal to be born. It will take time, generations, but my people could live again. She placed a clawed hand over the mark on his shoulder. You carry part of us already, Mitchell. You could be part of that rebirth. The connection between them pulsed with emotions too complex for words. Gratitude, hope, a fierce protectiveness, and something deeper, more primal, a bond that transcended species. Mitchell thought of his life in Zoravan Prime. The endless courier runs, the constant struggle to survive, the loneliness of urban existence. What was he really leaving behind? And what might he be moving toward? Will I ever be able to come back? He asked. Xylia's expression softened. The stars are vast, but not impassable. If you wish to return someday, I would help you find the way. Mitchell looked at the mark on his shoulder, now a permanent part of him. It had changed him in ways both profound and subtle. But the greatest change had been his choice to help Xylia, to protect her, to stand with her against those who would harm her and her kind. I'm ready, he said. As they boarded the ship, as the strange alien engines hummed to life, Xylia turned to him one last time. You are marked, she said, echoing her words from that first night. But now they carried a different meaning. Not a threat or a claim of ownership, but an acknowledgement of connection, a belonging. You are mine, she continued, but then added something new, and I am yours. The mark on Mitchell's shoulder pulsed with blue light, a silent affirmation of her words. Whatever the future held, on Kavas or beyond, they would face it together. Human and Kazal, marked and marker, changed forever by an encounter in a neon-lit alley on a world they were now leaving behind. As Zoravan Prime dwindled to a glittering point of light below them, Mitchell felt no regret, only a wild, fierce joy at the unknown path ahead. He was marked. He was changed. He was home.